My granddaughter slipped under the dining table, pressed her cold little mouth to my ear, and whispered, "Grandpa, tonight my parents are going to take away your fortune." At the same moment, my daughter laid a black fountain pen beside my plate like it belonged there, and a white memory care van rolled into my driveway. My fingers went so numb, I dropped my fork hard enough to chip one of Margaret's wedding china plates. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I looked straight at Claire and said, "Bring me the workshop key." That was the first crack. By midnight, I knew why the brass key had vanished, what was in the folder beside my plate, and how far my own family had already gone behind my back. If you've ever been smiled at while someone reached for your life, stay with me, because what happened after that whisper still turns my stomach. And the truth is, that night did not begin with the pen. It began 3 weeks earlier, when Margaret's brass key disappeared from the blue porcelain bowl by the back door. My wife had kept that key on a ring with a tiny silver thimble charm. The thimble was scratched on one side because she used to worry it with her thumbnail whenever she was thinking. After she died, I left the key where she always left it, not because I couldn't move on, because some things are not clutter. Some things are proof that a life was real. That key opened my workshop, and in the workshop, behind the third drawer of a battered oak file cabinet, was where I kept every paper that mattered. The original deed to the house, the property survey, the trust paperwork, the ledger with every large check I had ever written to Claire and Daniel. Because Margaret used to say generosity without records was just another way to get lied to later. I noticed the key was missing on a Tuesday morning while the kettle was boiling. I remember that because the kitchen window had fogged from the rain, and Claire was in the driveway telling Lily to hurry up for school. She had one of those expensive wool coats with the belt tied too tight, the kind women wear when they want to look effortless but have thought about it for 40 minutes. Daniel was by the cottage, with his phone pressed to his ear, pacing off the side yard in polished brown shoes that sank into the wet grass. At first I thought I had misplaced the key. That happens when you're 73. Not everything is a conspiracy. Sometimes you just set something down while carrying laundry and find it later in the linen closet. But then I remembered I hadn't touched that key in months. My workshop sat 40 feet from the house, behind the old hydrangeas Margaret planted the summer Claire turned 10. I had built that workshop myself. Cedar siding, tall north window, pegboard walls, a cast iron stove in the corner. It still smelled like sawdust, orange hand cleaner, and the faint sweet ghost of Margaret's cinnamon bread, because for years she used to bring me slices on a napkin while I worked. I raised Claire in that workshop as much as in the house. She learned fractions on scrap pine, she painted a birdhouse at that bench, and cried when the roof slanted crooked. When she was 15 and mean in the casual, thoughtless way teenagers can be, she still came out there after her first heartbreak and sat on the floor in her soccer uniform while I pretended to sharpen chisels so she could cry without being watched. That's why the missing key bothered me more than it should have. Not because of the metal, because it meant somebody had touched a place that had always been sacred in this family, and had done it quietly. I found the workshop door unlocked that same afternoon. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, listening. The old refrigerator motor in the back hummed once and fell silent. Wind tapped the loose corner of a plywood sheet against the wall. A coffee mug I hadn't used in years sat on my bench half an inch to the left of where it belonged. Maybe that sounds ridiculous, but when you build your life with your hands, you know where everything rests. I checked the file cabinet. Nothing looked obviously missing. The folders were there, the insurance papers, the deed envelope, the trust file. Still, the drawer didn't slide quite right, and the false back panel had a fresh scratch near the nail hole. That should have been enough. It wasn't, because I wanted to believe my daughter would never do anything ugly in a room built by her father. Claire and Daniel had been living in the guest cottage behind my main house for 7 years. It was supposed to be temporary. Daniel's first real estate project had collapsed. Claire had been pregnant with Lily, and they came to me with that special kind of adult-child shame that is half apology, half expectation. Just 6 months, Dad? I built that cottage myself after Lily was born. Not because they asked, because Claire looked exhausted, and the apartment stairs were bad for the baby, and Daniel had that frantic look men get when they are running out of money, but not out of pride. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, deep porch, yellow front door, because Margaret said, Children should live near color. 6 months became a year became 2. Then Daniel had another temporary cash flow problem. Then Claire said the school district mattered. Then the market was too high. Then rates were bad. Then Lily needed stability. Every crisis had the same ending. My checkbook. I paid for Claire's first semester at community college when her mother and I were stretched thin. I paid Daniel's tax bill when he forgot quarterly estimates, and the penalties hit. I covered 2 rounds of fertility treatment before Lily, because Claire cried in my lap and said she was terrified she would never be a mother. I co-signed nothing after Margaret died, but I wrote checks, always as gifts, never loans. And every time Claire kissed my cheek and said, "I'll never forget this," that line came back to me later, like a joke told too early. The first real warning came from the bank. A young man named Evan, who had been there maybe 6 months, called to verify whether I wanted to authorize a consolidated asset summary to be emailed to a third party. I was at the hardware store, buying brass screws. A third party who? I asked. There was a pause, papers shuffling. A Daniel Mercer. My son-in-law? Yes, sir. We received a request through the online portal. I didn't make that request. The silence on the line changed shape. Professionals have a tone they use when they realize they are standing in the doorway of something ugly. I'm very sorry, Mr. Sloan. I'll flag the account immediately. I stood in aisle 9 under fluorescent lights, holding a box of screws I no longer needed, and felt something cold settle behind my ribs. That evening, Claire brought over chicken soup in Margaret's old red Dutch oven and acted like nothing had happened. She had learned that trick from better people than Daniel. Not lying exactly, just moving around truth so smoothly you felt rude for trying to pin it down. "How was your day?" she asked, spooning noodles into my bowl. "Interesting," I said. She smiled. "That sounds ominous." The bank called. Her hand hesitated for less than a second. Then she set the ladle down. "About what?" "About an account request from Daniel." "Oh, that." She exhaled, soft and irritated, like I had made her repeat something obvious. "Dad, please don't make this a thing. Daniel was trying to help us get organized. If something happens to you, I need to know what exists. If something happens to me, Judith knows what exists." Judith Blum had been my lawyer for 18 years. Margaret trusted her because she was the kind of woman who wore plain navy suits and never wasted a word pretending to care more than she did. If Judith said she'd handle something, it got handled. Claire sat across from me and folded her hands. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," she said. "You still think in compartments, different files, different people, different drawers. That might have worked 30 years ago, but it's not practical anymore." Practical? For who? For the family. There it was. Not concern. Not love. The family. As if I had somehow become separate from the very thing I spent my life feeding. I didn't raise my voice. I just watched steam rise from my soup and said, "My money is not a group project." Her jaw tightened. Then she smiled again. "You always get defensive when anybody mentions planning." That wasn't the part that stayed with me. It was what happened when she stood up to carry her bowl to the sink. She glanced, quick as a reflex, toward the blue porcelain bowl by the back door where Margaret's brass key used to sit. Just a flick of the eyes. But I saw it. And once I saw that, the rest of the week began to arrange itself into a pattern I no longer liked. Daniel started walking the property lines. Not strolling, measuring. He would stand out by the west fence with his phone held flat, then crouch to look at the drainage ditch, then pace toward the road where the maples thinned. Twice, I caught him photographing the back acreage from angles that made the house disappear. When I asked what he was doing, he laughed. "Just thinking. This land is wasted." Wasted. 5 riverfront acres, 2 structures, an orchard Margaret planted with her bare hands, a workshop that held half my life, and he called it wasted because nobody had paved it. Then Claire started using a new tone with me. Soft. Clinical. The tone people use with patients, not parents. "Dad, maybe you should let us set up auto-pay." "Dad, maybe you shouldn't be on ladders anymore." "Dad, maybe it's time to think about a lower maintenance lifestyle." She said everything like it was for my comfort. And every suggestion moved me 1 inch farther from the center of my own life. I might still have brushed it off if not for Lily. Lily had always been my shadow. She was 12 then, all elbows and serious eyes and a braid down her back that never stayed tight for more than an hour. She preferred my workshop to her school friends' houses. She liked sanding wood, feeding the stray orange cat that visited the porch, and listening to old stories about how her grandmother once backed a pickup truck through a fence and then blamed the fence for being too enthusiastic. But that month, Lily stopped lingering. She would start toward the workshop and then turn back if Claire called her name. She flinched when Daniel spoke sharply. Once I found her standing by the hydrangeas staring at the cottage window, like she was trying to hear through glass. "Everything okay, Bug?" I asked. She looked up too fast. "Yeah." Kids say "yeah" in different ways. That one meant no. I waited. She dug her sneaker into the dirt. "Grandpa? MMHM? Can somebody be wrong, even if they keep saying it's for your own good?" The wind moved the leaves over us with a dry, rattling sound. I kept my voice easy. "Yes." She nodded, like that confirmed something she already feared, and said nothing else. I should have pressed. I didn't. That failure still stings. 3 days later, I found a glossy brochure in my recycling bin. Cedar Pines Memory Residence. There was a silver-haired couple on the front porch, laughing into a sunset nobody who actually lived there had probably ever seen. Inside, there were promises about dignity, care, transition planning, and a gentle intake experience for families facing difficult decisions. Families. Always families. I carried the brochure into Claire's kitchen. She was slicing strawberries into a ceramic bowl. Daniel was not there. "What's this?" I asked. She looked once, and didn't even bother pretending surprise. "Oh, that. You've said that before." She set the knife down, careful, almost irritated by my lack of efficiency. "Dad, I toured a few places, that's all." "For who?" "For the future." "I have a future. It's in that house." Her mouth flattened. "You fell on the porch last month." "I slipped in the rain." "You left the stove on in April." "I turned the wrong burner." "You forgot Lily's spring concert." I had the date wrong. Every example came out of her mouth, polished and ready, like she had been stacking them somewhere. Then she delivered the line I think she believed would end the conversation. "We are not going to wait for an emergency. Not we hope. Not we're worried. We are not going to wait." That was when I finally understood something important. They were not preparing for the possibility that I might someday need help. They were preparing to define me as a problem, before I had the chance to refuse their solution. That night, I called Judith. I sat at my kitchen table, under the yellow pendant light Margaret picked out in 1989, and told the story straight through. The missing key, the bank request, the brochure, the property photos, Claire's language. Judith didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she said, "Do not sign anything. Do not give anyone digital access. Tomorrow morning, come to my office." The next morning, she had 2 stacks waiting. One was my existing estate plan. The other was a list of things she wanted me to do immediately. Independent medical assessment, updated account protections, a written record of every incident and date. And most of all, she wanted the original deed, trust, and survey moved out of the workshop that same day. "Do you think they're actually trying to take my assets?" I asked. Judith looked at me over her glasses. "I think your daughter may be telling herself this is care. I think your son-in-law is telling himself this is practicality. I think both of them are standing close to conduct that courts call elder financial abuse." The room got very quiet. "You need your own medical baseline," she said. "If they try to paint confusion later, I want objective evidence." So I went. Dr. Patel ran every test he had: memory recall, sequencing, orientation, attention, delayed word lists. I got annoyed on principle at being treated like a question mark, but I did it anyway. When he finished, he handed me a summary letter and said, "Mr. Sloan, you are more organized than half the people running city government." I laughed harder than it deserved, mostly from relief. Then I drove home, took the spare workshop key Margaret had hidden years ago inside the old mantel clock, opened the cabinet, and moved every original document into Judith's office vault. I left copies behind. That was the moment I made my decision. Not to fight, to stop underestimating how carefully other people can arrange your surrender while calling it love. For a week after that, everything went strangely calm. Too calm. Claire brought over banana bread. Daniel fixed the loose porch step without being asked. Lily avoided my eyes. The cottage windows glowed late into the night. Sometimes quiet is not peace. Sometimes quiet is people getting their paperwork in order. Then Claire announced the dinner. "It'll be nice," she said. "Just family. A little remembrance for Mom. She loved early fall. Margaret had died in October. Not on that date, but near enough that Claire could wrap the evening in grief and nobody would question it." "Why now?" I asked. "Because we don't do enough together anymore." That sentence, from a woman who lived 40 feet away and came into my kitchen without knocking, nearly made me laugh. But I agreed, because by then, I wanted to see what they thought I still didn't know. The day of the dinner was bright and cool. The kind of October light that makes every edge look cleaner than it is. I trimmed the dead heads off the hydrangeas, swept the porch, and put on the brown wool sweater Margaret used to call my decent man's sweater, because she said it made me look trustworthy. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary chicken and lemon polish. Claire had set the long dining table with Margaret's china, cloth napkins, and the silver candlesticks we only used at Christmas. She was good at surfaces. That had always been one of her talents. She could make a room look generous while freezing the air inside it. Daniel arrived in a pressed navy blazer, carrying 2 bottles of wine he could not afford, and talking louder than usual. He kissed my cheek like we were close. His watch flashed when he poured. "Tonight's about ease," he said. "No stress, no heavy conversations." Whenever a man says that before dinner, brace yourself. Lily came in last. Her braid was crooked, her face was pale. She hugged me so tightly my back cracked. Then I noticed the white van at the far end of the driveway. Not an ambulance, not a plumber, a transport service. Small logo on the door, tinted windows, engine idling. I looked at Daniel. He didn't follow my eyes. He just kept talking about Cabernet. That should have been enough to make a scene right then. But I wanted one more thing. Proof in their own timing. Dinner started almost pleasantly. That was the worst part. We passed potatoes. Daniel made a joke about politicians. Claire asked Lily about school. Candlelight moved across the glass front cabinet Margaret had refinished by hand. For 10 whole minutes, if you didn't know better, it looked like a family. Then Claire made her toast. "To transitions," she said, lifting her glass. "To taking care of each other before life forces us to." I felt Lily go still beside me. After dessert plates were set down, Daniel reached for the leather folder on the sideboard. "Arthur," he said, switching to the voice he used when pretending this was man to man, "there are just a few documents we'd like to simplify tonight. Nothing dramatic. Some power of attorney language, some medical directives, access in case of emergency. Basic grown-up stuff." There it was, wrapped in civility, handed over with pie. Then Lily slid off her chair, disappeared under the tablecloth, and whispered that sentence into my ear. "Grandpa, tonight my parents are going to take away your fortune." Her breath smelled faintly of apples, her hand was shaking against my sleeve, and suddenly every loose piece snapped together so hard it almost made me dizzy. The missing key, the survey photos, the bank request, the brochure, the van, the false softness. But what happened next made it worse, because Lily wasn't finished. When I bent lower, she pushed something cold into my palm. Margaret's brass key, and a folded note, torn from a math notebook. I opened the note beneath the table. "Don't drink the tea, I have proof." For 1 second, the room sounded far away. Forks on china, Daniel's chair creaking, the low hum of the refrigerator. Claire saying my name like she was already managing me. I straightened up. My heartbeat felt thick and slow, like it was trying not to scare me. "Claire," I said, "bring me the workshop key." Her face changed before she could stop it. A tiny blanching around the mouth. "Why?" "Because if we're discussing my future," I said, We are going to do it with every receipt in this family laid out in front of us. Daniel smiled, but there was iron underneath it now. Arthur, that's not necessary. I didn't ask you. Claire looked at Daniel. That glance told me more than a confession would have. I don't have it, she said. I opened my hand. The brass key glinted against my skin. Lily had tucked herself back into her chair, eyes down, like a child hiding inside a storm she already started. The room went silent. Even the candles seemed to stand straighter. I rose slowly. Not because I was weak, because old men scare people more when they move like they have time. Then, let's all go together, I said. Nobody wanted to be the first to refuse. So they followed me. Down the back hall, through the mudroom, across the dark yard where the grass was silver under the security light, into the workshop. The air inside held the dry, familiar smell of cedar dust and machine oil. The overhead bulbs clicked on one by one. Shadows gathered in the rafters. My bench stood where it always had, scarred and solid. I walked to the oak cabinet, opened the third drawer, removed the false panel, and pulled out the copies I had left behind. Then I set them on the bench beside the old blue ledger Margaret had once called my book of inconvenient truths. Daniel spoke first. This is insane. No, I said. This is wood, paper, dates, numbers. Insanity is bringing a transport van to your father-in-law's remembrance dinner. Claire's head snapped toward me. We were going to discuss options. With intake paperwork in the driveway? Her voice sharpened. Dad, lower your tone. I almost admired the reflex. She still thought tone was the issue. I looked at the folder Daniel was carrying. Open it. He didn't move. Open it, I repeated. The notary Claire had quietly invited for basic grown-up stuff was standing by the door now, clutching her handbag with both hands. She looked like a woman who had expected signatures and wine and had instead wandered into the middle of a sinkhole. Daniel finally set the folder on the bench and flipped it open. Durable power of attorney. Medical proxy. Property management authorization. And underneath those, a voluntary residential admission packet for Cedar Pines with my name already typed in. My hand did not shake. That surprised me. What is this? I asked, though I already knew. Claire lifted her chin. It's a plan. For what? For reality. There it was. The honest word at last. She stepped forward, voice low and urgent now, the daughter costume slipping. You can act insulted if you want, but we have been carrying everything. The house is too much. The land is too much. Your files are chaos. Your routines are outdated. And if something happens suddenly, we are the ones who have to clean it up. Daniel jumped in fast, sensing weakness or maybe smelling blood. We're talking about responsible stewardship, Arthur, not theft. This property is dead equity. The cash is sitting there doing nothing. There are ways to structure everything so Claire isn't left in a panic if you decline. If I decline? Claire folded her arms. You already are. That landed harder than yelling would have. Because she said it calmly, like a diagnosis she had rehearsed, until it no longer sounded cruel to her. I put my hand flat on the blue ledger. You want to talk about what has been carried? I said. Good, let's talk. I opened the ledger. July 2008. Claire tuition balance. Paid. March 2011. Daniel tax lien. Paid. August 2012. Fertility clinic transfer. Paid. May 2014. High-risk pregnancy specialist. Paid. November 2016. Cottage materials and labor. Gift. January 2018. Daniel bridge loan shortfall. Paid. June 2020. Lily private school deposit. Paid. Each line was my handwriting. Each amount exact. The workshop swallowed the silence. After every date, Daniel scoffed first. You're really doing this? Oh, I'm just beginning. Claire's face had gone hard, but I saw something flicker under it. Not shame, never that quickly. Fear. Dad, nobody is denying you helped. No, I said. You're denying what help means. Then I turned to Lily. Bug, show me. Claire wheeled around so fast she nearly knocked over a stool. Show you what? Lily was trembling now. I could see it in her braid. But she took out her phone anyway. Lily, Daniel said. And suddenly his voice had no polish left at all. Put that away. She didn't. She stepped beside me and opened a video. The image was shaky. Cottage kitchen, night, Claire at the counter, Daniel by the sink. Their voices came through tinny but clear. He'll fight if we tell him before dinner, Claire said. That's why the doctor note matters, Daniel answered. He takes the tea, he gets foggy, we document confusion, we sign him in, and by Monday, the developer wire hits escrow. My lungs seemed to forget what to do. Lily hit the screen again. Another clip. Daniel's voice. Once the power of attorney's in place, we move the accounts, list the house, split the rear acreage. The old man doesn't need 5 acres to himself. Then Claire, tired and flat. The way people sound when they stop dressing up their conscience. He won't even understand what's happening after the first week. The notary made a small sound in the back of her throat. Daniel lunged. Not for me, for the phone. I moved between him and Lily before I had time to think about my age. My shoulder slammed into his chest. The stool skidded. The folder fell open on the floor. Don't you touch her, I said. He stepped back, breathing hard, color rising into his face. For the first time all night, he looked exactly like what he was, a man whose plan had depended on old age being soft. Claire stared at Lily, as if betrayal only counted when it happened to her. You recorded us? Lily's chin shook. You were going to drug Grandpa. It was melatonin in tea, Claire snapped. And the instant it came out, I saw she knew she had said too much. That was the moment her whole structure cracked. Not because of the lie. Because of how quickly she reached for a smaller lie once the bigger one broke. It was to calm him, she said, words tumbling now. You know how he gets when he feels cornered. I laughed. One sharp, ugly laugh. How I get? Claire's eyes flashed. Yes. How you get. Defensive, impossible, suspicious. You leave everything to chance and force everyone else to live in cleanup mode. The workshop light buzzed overhead. Somewhere outside, the van engine cut off. I looked at my daughter and saw, very clearly, the line she had crossed inside herself long before she crossed one on paper. She had stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as an obstacle with a pulse. Then, the side door opened. Judith walked in carrying a leather briefcase and wearing the same navy suit she wore to depositions and funerals. I had texted her when dessert was served. She came in without hurry, took in the bench, the folder, the notary, Lily's white face, and Daniel's ruined expression in about 2 seconds. Good evening, she said. Daniel swore under his breath. Judith set her briefcase on the bench and removed 3 envelopes. The first she handed to the notary. You were invited here under false pretenses, she said. You may want to review the recorded material before witnessing anything tonight. The second she laid in front of Daniel. This is notice that Mr. Sloane's financial institutions have flagged and documented prior unauthorized access attempts. Any further attempt to obtain information, move funds, or present yourself as authorized will be referred immediately for investigation. His face went gray. The third she handed to Claire. This is a formal revocation of any implied permission to manage Mr. Sloane's property or medical decisions. It also includes written notice that the guest cottage license is terminated. You and Mr. Mercer will vacate the property. Claire stared at the paper like it was written in another language. What? Judith did not blink. You will leave. Daniel barked, a humorless laugh. You can't do that in one night. No, I said. But I can start in one night. Claire looked from Judith to me, as if trying to find the soft spot she had always counted on. Dad, are you serious? I was quieter than I had been all evening. Yes. Judith opened her briefcase again and took out one more folder. This afternoon, she said, Mr. Sloane executed an updated estate plan and property trust. The residence, workshop, and surrounding acreage are now held in the Margaret Sloane Homestead Trust for Mr. Sloane's lifetime use and protection. No sale may occur during his lifetime without his express written consent and medical certification of capacity, which, for the record, he has. She placed Dr. Patel's evaluation on the bench. Claire's mouth actually fell open. Daniel grabbed the top page, scanned it, and looked like he might choke. And because Mr. Sloane prefers precision, Judith added, his successor beneficiary for the residential property is Lily Mercer, not either of you. This time even, I felt the room shift. Lily whipped her head toward me. What? I turned to her. Because you were the only person in this family who protected me when it cost you something. Claire made a wounded sound. Not grief, injury, possession being denied. You used our daughter against us. No, I said. You used your daughter as cover. That hit. I saw it land in the way her shoulders changed. Daniel tried one last angle. This is emotional theater, he said. Arthur, listen to me. You are making a permanent decision based on one overheard conversation taken out of context. Out of context? Judith said. A pre-filled intake packet, unauthorized bank access, sedative administration without consent, and a recorded discussion of escrow timing is not context. It is pattern. He opened his mouth again. Then Judith delivered the blade. I have also prepared a report for the County Elder Abuse Unit. It has not yet been filed. That depends on what happens in the next 10 minutes. The workshop went dead still. Even Daniel understood that sentence. Claire did too. And that was when she stopped performing and finally said the ugliest truthful thing in her body. We deserved security, she said, voice breaking with fury. You have all of this, and we've spent years waiting, helping, adjusting, orbiting your moods, your house, your systems, your grief. We built our lives around you. I looked at her for a long time. No, I said. You built your plans on my death and got impatient. No one moved. No one had anywhere to hide from that line. Then Lily started crying. Not loud, not theatrical, just the sound of a child hearing the shape of her own home break in front of her. I put my hand on the back of her neck, the way I used to when she was little and had bad dreams. Claire saw that and stepped forward. Lily, sweetheart, come here. Lily recoiled. That hurt Claire more than any legal document on the bench. For the first time all night, she looked stripped, not polished, not righteous, just a mother realizing her child had chosen the safer adult. The notary cleared her throat. I'm leaving. Please do, Judith said. She did. A minute later, we heard her heels crunch fast across the gravel. Daniel rubbed both hands over his face and shifted tactics again, like desperate men always do. Fine, he said. You want honesty? Here, I'm in trouble. I took a position on a development deal, assuming this land could backstop part of it once Claire had authority. I was trying to fix things before they collapsed. Claire turned toward him as if he had slapped her. You said it was a bridge. It was. You said we had time. We did. If your father had just what? I said. Gone quietly? He looked at me with naked resentment now. Yes. That one word ended everything. Not the trust, not the cottage. Everything. Because there it was. The wish beneath every softened sentence, beneath every safety brochure, beneath every bowl of soup. Go quietly. Give us the house. Give us the money. Give us the story where we are still the good people. I drew a breath and felt, for the first time that night, not rage. Relief. Relief is a strange companion to betrayal, but it comes when confusion finally dies. I want you both out of my house, I said. Claire flinched. Dad, tonight. Where are we supposed to go? I looked at her steadily. You brought a transport van for me. I trust you can arrange a hotel for yourselves. Daniel muttered something filthy. Judith's voice turned sharp enough to cut wire. Be very careful. He stared at her. Then at the bench. Then at the phone in Lily's hand. You could actually see the math changing in his face. Not ethics. Consequences. That's the only language some people ever truly learn. Claire tried one last time. And this was the part that broke me more than the papers. She said, quietly, I was scared. Not about losing me. About losing access. Maybe she even believed those things had become the same. I nodded once. I know, I said. That's why I no longer trust you. After that, the night moved fast. Judith called a driver she knew and had Lily picked up by her Aunt Helen, Claire's older sister, who lived 15 minutes away and still had enough decency not to ask questions before showing up. Claire protested, then stopped when Lily refused to meet her eyes. Daniel and Claire packed 2 suitcases in furious silence from the cottage, while Judith stayed in my kitchen and typed notes on a yellow legal pad. The white van left empty. At 1 in the morning, Daniel drove off first. Claire stood by the yellow cottage door with one overnight bag and looked at the dark outline of the main house, as if she still could not believe wood and money and authority had all refused to follow her. She said, "My name once." I didn't answer. When her taillights disappeared beyond the sycamores, the whole property exhaled, and I sat alone in my workshop until dawn, with Margaret's brass key in my palm. 3 days later, the consequences started arriving. The development deal Daniel had been leaning on collapsed when his partners discovered the land had never been his to leverage. One of them, apparently less sentimental than fraudulent, threatened suit almost immediately. The bank completed its internal review and found multiple access attempts from devices linked to the cottage. Judith filed the elder abuse report anyway, not because I wanted spectacle, because silence is how families like mine keep doing this to older people who still call it a misunderstanding. Claire called 17 times in 2 days. I did not answer. Then came the messages. I panicked. I only meant to protect you. Daniel pushed too hard. We can fix this privately. Lily misses home. That last one almost got me. Then Helen called and said, Lily does not miss the cottage. She misses you. So I picked Lily up from school that Friday. She got into my truck and sat very straight, backpack on her knees. I waited until we were halfway down River Road before I said anything. You don't have to be brave in here. Her mouth trembled. Then the whole week came out of her in one hard rush. She had seen Daniel take the brass key from Claire's purse. She had watched them spread my survey over the cottage table. She had heard the words capacity, escrow, and Monday wire without fully understanding any of them until she looked up Cedar Pines on Daniel's tablet and saw the intake forms. She had tried to tell Claire it felt wrong. Claire told her grown-up decisions can look harsh to children. She had cried in the bathroom, stolen her father's tablet, recorded the videos, taken the key back, and hidden both in her school backpack until dinner. I was scared you wouldn't believe me, she whispered. I had to pull the truck over, not because I doubted her, because I suddenly saw how alone she must have felt in that cottage, with 2 adults teaching her that conscience was childish. I put the truck in park and turned toward her. Lily, I said, what you did was brave, but what matters even more is this. You were right. She cried then. So did I, a little. Old men hate admitting that part. Too bad. The weeks after that were ugly in the practical ways ugliness usually is. Lawyers, access logs, temporary custody arrangements while Claire and Daniel's marriage started coming apart under the weight of truth and debt. Helen kept Lily more often than not. Daniel moved into a furnished rental near the highway and sent furious emails through his own attorney. Claire drifted between apology and accusation, which is another way of saying she still wanted the story to hurt her less than it hurt everybody else. Judith handled most of it. I handled the house. I changed locks, canceled the gate code, removed Claire from every emergency contact form I could find. I put the red Dutch oven back in my own kitchen and scrubbed it myself. I boxed the memory care brochures and the unsigned admission papers and stored them with the report, not because I wanted souvenirs, but because gaslighting fades when paper does not. Then something quieter happened. The property got peaceful again. Not happy right away? Peaceful. There is a difference. Peace is the first clean breath. After you stop pretending rot is normal. Lily started spending every Saturday with me in the workshop. At first, she mostly swept and sat. Kids recovering from betrayal do not always need lessons. They need steadiness. Same chair, same mug of cocoa, same old radio low in the corner, same adult who does not make them choose reality over belonging. One afternoon she asked, "Are you really leaving me the house?" I was sanding the edge of a walnut box lid. Fine dust lit up in the window like smoke. If you still want it when you're older, I said. Why me? I set the sandpaper down. Because houses should go to people who know what they're for. She was quiet. Then she said, not for selling? Not first. That made her smile for the first time in weeks. Claire eventually wrote me a letter by hand. No perfume, no polished phrasing, just 6 pages of cramped script that sounded more tired than defensive. She admitted Daniel's debts were worse than she had told me. She admitted she had started by wanting oversight and let herself slide into justifying things because every step felt temporary. She admitted she knew the tea was wrong. She admitted seeing the van in the driveway made her sick and not stopping it anyway. She did not ask for money. That was new. I wrote back once. You can be sorry and still not be trusted. If you want a relationship with me someday, start by becoming someone Lily does not have to fear. I have no idea whether that changed her. That is no longer my job. Daniel, for his part, lost nearly everything he was trying to save. The deal died. The investors came after him. Last I heard, he was living in a small apartment over a dry cleaner and explaining to new people that he had a rough patch with family assets. Men like him always reach for business language when the truth would sound too naked. As for me, I stayed exactly where they thought I no longer belonged. In my house, at my table, under Margaret's pendant light. Winter came, then spring. The orchard budded again. I had the porch repaired, the workshop roof patched, and the yellow cottage rented to a traveling nurse with a laugh loud enough to scare crows. She paid on time, minded her business, and once brought me peach cobbler for no reason at all. That felt almost medicinal. Lily turned 13 in June. She asked for one present. Not clothes, not a phone, a key ring. So I bought a plain brass one from the hardware store. And in the workshop, we polished Margaret's old key until it shone. The original. The one that had opened the room where I kept my records. The one Claire's hand had reached for. The one Lily put back into mine before everything broke open. I told her there are 2 kinds of inheritance. One is money. The other is the part of you that learns the difference between care and control before it is too late. Then I handed her the key, not because the house was hers now, not because I was disappearing, because trust, when it survives, deserves a sound. Metal against metal, a clean click, a door opened by the right hands. That evening, after she left, I stood alone in the workshop as the light went gold through the north window. Margaret's bench was still scarred. My ledger was still on the shelf. Outside, the hydrangeas moved in the summer wind like old women gossiping. For a long time I listened to the house settling. Not empty, not threatened. Mine. And on the hook beside the door where it belonged, Margaret's brass key caught the light and stayed.